welcome to another episode of the WCN-Fluencer podcast, video podcast. Elizabeth, we're going big time again. We're doing video. I don't know. What do you think?
You're always up for trying anything new, Chris, and I'm right there cheering you on.
Well, and speaking of new, you notice my new red glasses?
They are very sharp.
I'm thinking that if this video gigs don't work out, I can get a job at the North Pole this year.
Yes, or Warby Parker.
Warby Parker. Now that one is really good. But Elizabeth, we started these influencer podcasts just earlier this year. I think you're the 4th episode, but I say this in all sincerity, and maybe some of the other folks are going to be mad at me, but you're really the superstar of the Whole Care Network. You're what you've accomplished, what you've done from 5 years. Can you believe it's been over 5 years since we had that initial phone conversation about podcasting?
I remember it well. I mean, that's the thing is I have you to thank for even being here, Chris, and being a podcaster, because you were my cheerleader when I thought, you said you would be good to have your own podcast after being on your show, Healing Ties. And it was, in the back of my brain, I studied broadcast journalism at Penn State and get to kind of go back to those roots. But it was really you giving me that confidence, like, you can do this, that really got me started. And so I thank you, Chris. You're the reason why I'm here.
Well, and it's about that. I know people have heard me say this time and time again, but it really is true. It's where story sharing, where diversity meets the road to collaborate on a common cause. Mm-hmm. And I can't think of any other, and I say this word lightly, issue like caregiving, where stories connect people.
They do connect people. And, I never really thought of myself either as like a caregiving advocate, but stories give faces to the issues and the problems and the opportunities that we have in the caregiving space. And we are caregiving advocates. Story sharing is advocacy. And the more people that share their stories, we're not just 53 million family caregivers. We're Chris and Elizabeth and everybody else. And how important that is, that it makes it real.
Right. And I always go back to the folks that were before me, and people that put me in the position to be with the Whole Care Network. And like Denise Brown, when she had caregiving.com. Denise, I don't really talk to her that much now, but she was a strong mentor. She encouraged me to use my talents and skills. And I think it's important to recognize those folks that help us along the journey, because it is a journey. They're
stepping stones. And you know what? We wouldn't have met, Chris, if it wasn't for Denise Brown, because I became a certified caregiving consultant, and we met in Chicago at one of Denise's conferences. So she is a stepping stone for both of us, where it is like this path, through a lily pond, baby, this like beautiful path that kind of gets us to these places, and we kind of cross over and we intersect. And one of the most amazing things that I love about this caregiving business that I'm in with Happy Health is the people that I've met and the friendships that I've made.
So let's talk a little bit about Happy Healthy Caregiver. It's more than just a podcast.
It's a lot. It's my livelihood now for the past year. It's, I'm excited to I took the plunge to say, I've been building this up as a side hustle since my own caregiving journey started with my aging parents, and it has been layered on into many things. Like you said, it started as a blog, and then I became a caregiving coach, and then a podcaster and a keynote speaker, and working with partner collaborations. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some. I'm an author. There's just been so many pieces of it that have been layered on since 2014, when I called that my spiral year with my parents, where I'm just one of these people that I like to kind of like push my sleeves up and dive in. And I'm like, I want to make this journey easier for other people.
Right. It's about giving back.
Yes. and really validating that you didn't just do this whole thing for nothing.
Well, that's really what life is supposed to be about,
right?
Giving back and being there for others, especially in their time of need. But I guess I'm going to ask you kind of maybe a personal question.
Well, good. I'm already teary-eyed, so if you can get the full-fledged thing going, then that's why video is so good. Like, look, we are real people. Yes,
we are real people with emotions, and but I would imagine it had to be an emotional decision for you to go full time at this, to be an entrepreneur, to see the opportunity there, to leave your job.
Yeah, it was huge. It was a lot of tears and a lot of conversations with my husband. And he thought, you're not going to have your 401k. We'd lose your benefits. Like, it's more than just the income, which I made a great income. I was a director in a Fortune 1000 company, and I made a really good living and gave myself a huge pay cut. Most people want to move in the opposite direction. But looking back, no regrets. Like, I think, like the pandemic and the Great Resignation gave people clarity, it had the same impact on me where, I got a gift in a way from my company. They furloughed me for 2 months and I was devastated. I was a top employee, but I was also in a very strategic position, and they were trying to just keep the lights on in their company. And I couldn't believe that I went from like this trip earner the year before of like 6 people in my company that got a trip to like, you're furloughing me? What? Was a huge, huge kick in the stomach for me. But yet I didn't think I was going to have a job to come back to. So I leaned in for those 2 months into Happy Healthy Caregiver. And then I was one of the lucky ones that got invited to go back to work. And I was very disenchanted through that process of being furloughed. I don't know what other people's experiences was, but for me, we don't talk to the people that are furloughed, the people that are still working. It was very isolating. And so I just kind of became disenchanted, but I leaned into the business. And then I had 2 big jobs when I got back. I had to work. I had 2 kids in college, and there was no package that they were offering me. Yeah. But at that point, it became clear to me, like, I got to get out of this. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And so then it was, the tearful conversations with my husband, Jason, who has been a big cheerleader for Happy Healthy Caregiver, and just like, hey, let's just see if there's enough signal to make a go of it. And it is, we talk off the air, Chris, about like being solopreneurs and some of the challenges with that. Mm-hmm. And we throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall. We see what sticks, and keep doing what sticks and kind of get rid of what doesn't stick.
I think that's called ready, shoot, aim.
Yes. So I've learned a lot. And I'll be, I'm very transparent with other business owners. Like, this is not for everybody. Being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. It is hard, but I know that I'm a disciplined person. I know I can manage a great to-do list. I never get through all of it in one day. And that's something I'm working through, is just putting on there what I think is realistic in the day, so that it is more of a ta-da list versus a to-do list.
A ta-da.
Yeah.
Very good on that.
And I think COVID taught me too that, like, one of the big worries I had was like, I don't know if I can work out of my house. I think I'll be so isolating. I don't know if I'll enjoy this. And then I thought, well, I've already done it. I've already conquered that fear. So that's no longer a fear. And I really appreciate the flexibility that this business has offered me, and that you can't put a price on. Like, I've been through the caregiving experiences with my own parents, but I've been able to help a cousin, through 2 deaths of her parents during this time in the past year. Very sad, but to be there with her and not feel like, oh my gosh, I have to take days off of work or figure that out and then being to go on the No Barriers Caregivers retreats, or just to do this wonderful family vacation. Like, I can't even count all the flexible time that I've been able to have in this past, year plus. To me, that's priceless.
Now, that's one of the many things that I've enjoyed over the past few years, where, having the ability to set your own schedule per se, yet be there for people when you know that they're in need.
Yes.
And if there's one trait that I think every caregiver has, it's that ability to multitask and focus on the important task at hand.
Yes. Yeah. We are masters at that. Pivoting, multitasking. And really that's been, I preach or coach a lot on self-care and try to practice what I preach. And really that multitasking is what has worked for me, and how to infuse self-care in my own daily life is that, I can take a walk and I can listen to a business podcast on how I can grow my marketing or email list or whatever it is I'm focused on. I can fold laundry. I could, drive in the car and talk to a friend. It's constantly figuring out ways to re-engineer the process and work these self-care moments into the nooks and crannies of the day.
Boy, I've given a lot of thought and reflection on that word self-care. Well, I guess it's two words when you think of it. And
it's a hyphenated word.
It's a hyphenated, right? And I had somebody tell me not too long ago, he said, as a caregiver, I'm so tired of hearing people tell me to take care of myself. I'm just so tired of that word. And I said,
get it.
Yeah. So I said, well, why don't we change the conversation? Why don't we talk about having self-compassion?
Self-love, self-compassion, self-appreciation. Call it what you want.
Call it what you want. Just take time for yourself.
Self-sustainability. I think that would be a great...
Self-sustainability. That's all. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, whatever you want to call it, I get it. Like self-care is such a buzzword. And that was what bugged me too. Like I try to make a conscious effort on the podcast and in the blogs not to should all over people, SHOULD, because I don't want to be should on either. Like it feels like it negates everything that you are doing. You are already doing so much, just showing up in your day and taking on the challenges of the day, that to be should on just makes you feel like you're just never doing enough. And so I eliminate that word from what I do. And instead it's like, I just want to lay out some options, like a smorgasbord, and everybody, it works differently for people. But that was something that was so essential for me with Happy Healthy Caregiver, is I didn't want to just say you should take care of yourself. I want to show you, and I want to give you examples of people who are going to come on the show or write about their experiences that are living it, and that are that are really showing you examples. And it's different for everybody. Like, I don't like bubble baths. You can put those in front of my face. I like the idea of a bubble bath sounds great, but they're not fun. The water gets cold. The dogs are bugging me. I'm not quite comfortable. My book gets wet. Like, it's just not for me. So I got to find the self-care that works for me. And what works for me is making sure I get out every day outside. Like, I've got to be outside at some point every day, just soaking up the sun and moving my body, having a conversation with a friend. Those are the things that fill my bucket up.
Being connected. And speaking of having conversations with friends, you've got over 145 podcasts in 5 years.
I got a lot of friends. Yes.
You have a lot of friends.
They all stick out too. It's like, people are like, oh, what's your favorite episodes? I'm like, there's just some stories that stick with you. Some were amazing opportunities, like interviewing Lisa Gibbons, who was on Entertainment Tonight, very surreal experience. And I had to cancel on Lisa Gibbons. That was something that my mom had passed away, and I had to cancel my Lisa Gibbons episode. And that was like, I worked so hard to get that episode. I can't, but it's just like, she gets it. She's like,
she gets it. That's it. And that's the other unique thing about the caregiving. Well, there's so many people involved in it. I think the 53 million number is low, by the way.
I do too.
But we all understand. We may not know each other. But I could pick. You pick up the phone and you're talking to a caregiver, and there's an issue that comes up, a care issue. You understand. It's not a hardship to cancel, because you know that person's going to understand. Yeah, and that's another part of that hyphenated word, that self-care.
Yeah. It's just finding your social self-care. I mean, I think that's the other thing, is like, people don't see all the different pieces. Like, when I was first starting Happy Healthy Caregiver, I was so laser focused in on physical self-care, because that was the direct examples I had in my life of my parents. And they had essentially put us in a situation where we had to be caregivers because they did not prioritize their physical self-care.
Right.
And they were, morbidly obese and all of the cocktail of issues that come with that. And then same with my mother-in-law. She was a big smoker. So I had 3 examples in my life of what happens when you don't physically take care of yourself. And so that was just such a laser focus for me in those early podcasts, early blog posts I wrote. And then over the years, I've learned that there's so many different types of self-care. There's financial self-care, there's social self-care, like we talked about, there's spiritual and practical and professional, and it's all of it. And I want to cover all of those
4 pillars on the whole care network.
Yeah.
How do we take better care of ourselves through the pillars?
Yes, it's so important.
So what's on the horizon for Happy Healthy Caregiver?
Well, some of it is just keep on keeping on, keeping on with the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast, probably keep the same schedule going there, and having some variety of guests, different types of caregivers, some who are spouses, some are caring for aging parents, and again, getting their stories. One of the things that I'm finding a lot of traction with that I want to keep going with is connecting with employers. And really what I like about speaking in general is that I can scale some of the resource sharing and the support options to groups of people. And I love that about the podcast too. And that's very scalable, as that's how we can help this 53 million and really start to make a difference. And employers are starting to get it. And I think that that's due. One of the silver linings of the pandemic is that they understand that their employees are doing a lot and that they have options and they don't necessarily have to work at where they're working.
Right.
And so how do we make that a positive culture for people? And so I'm excited to see that there's more caregiver affinity groups and employee resource groups happening. And, I'm pounding the pavement to try to find them. But if they hopefully hear this or something else, I would love to come and talk to your group and really start to connect them and show them resources and just affirm that they're not alone and that there are things, but you have to kind of know how to navigate it. And we live in a world that's very fragmented in the healthcare and the caregiving space. And people like us, Chris, were trying to glue it all together in a nice patchwork quilt for people.
Boy, gluing it all together is that is a perfect analogy. Because when I look back and I've been in the space now, goodness, 12, 13 years. And just thinking back to when I did my master's thesis in 2016, the conversation about workplace caregiving really hadn't begun yet.
You felt like you couldn't really say anything because it would just kind of give you a tarnish on your, maybe it would, you wouldn't have the same opportunities or sometimes same kind of thing as being a working mother. It's like you kind of downplay.
Role. It. But now that I always use this word, but I don't know if it's appropriate. Now that caregiving seems to be the buzzword, people are more comfortable in talking about it, especially in the work setting. And then they find out that their coworkers are dealing with the same thing.
Yeah. And then we have some strategies, right? And then it's just kind of out in the open and we can be transparent and we can get the work done and we can prepare for the caregiving crisis that is potentially going to happen. And we see examples of hope that there are people that have been very successful in their careers. I would consider my career very successful as a working caregiver. I was lucky that I had support from my executive team, and not everybody has that.
Not everybody has that.
No.
That's another reason why it's so important to feel comfortable in sharing your story as you can. So
It's so true. It's so true. So that's one thing I'm excited about, is just connecting with more employers and doing more speaking. And then I'm also excited, Chris, that there are more companies that are really trying to solve this problem. I don't think this is one that our government is going to be able to just kind of wave a wand and solve. And so we need people in the private sector that are going to create products and services, and they need people like us that are going to, fast track and elevate that product or service in front of a care community. And that's where I think that we can also help through being WC-Influencers.
WCN-Influencers.
Yes, is that we can make that connection, because they don't have the social following, and they don't know where the caregivers are. And we know them. We get them.
We are them.
We are them. And we've built a trust and a trusted community. And, I'm picky about the people that I work with. I think that, you definitely have to align with the brand.
Right.
And I'd rather be a strategic partner than just be like an order taker and follow directions. Like, I really want to understand how we can work together. It's important.
You want to get in, right? Definitely, you want to be able to be a part, a major part of the solution. So in order for people to access all this wonderful information and how they can bring you on as a main part of their change, let everybody know your contact information.
Sure. You can find it all on happyhealthycaregiver.com. And that'll just navigate you to the upcoming events, the partnership opportunities, the podcast, the blog, the coaching services, the book. Like, it's all there.
It's all there. And it's also available on the Whole Care Network on Happy Healthy Caregiver. And Elizabeth, when we think back of that initial phone call 5 years ago to where we are now, you are certainly a WC-Influencer, and I can't thank you enough for being a part of the Whole Care Network.
Thank you, Chris. The feeling is mutual. I'm just feel very grateful and privileged to have this role and to be able to work with people like yourself and our other great podcasters.